Thanks, Renan. I am so excited to be here tonight. We have a very, very special treat for you. I'm just excited to be in the same room with this high caliber level of speakers and educators. So let me introduce them formally for you. An enrolled member of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes and a Kickapoo descendant, Joyce Silverthorne served as director of the Office of Indian Education at the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. from 2012 through 2016. From 1999 to 2008, she served as director of the CSKT Tribal Education Department and was the P20 Education Policy Advisor for the Montana State Superintendent Denise Juno from 2008 to 2010. She was also appointed to the Montana Board of Public Education for 10 years. She's an educator, a legislator, and an enrolled member of the Mandan. Carol Juneau was...
That's Carol.
Oh, that was you. Okay. Okay, I'll make sure I put that down at the bottom of yours. Carol Juneau was the first president of the Blackfeet Community College from 76 to 83 and worked for both Browning and Hart Butte Public Schools in various roles from 84 to 97. Her advocacy for increasing Native American political power led her to serve in the Montana House of Representatives from 99 to 06 and in the Montana State Senate from 07 to 2010. In 1999, Carol introduced the bill that became known as Indian Education for All, which outlined a path for instituting the 1972 Constitution's promise by requiring all Montana classrooms to incorporate Indian culture and history across the curriculum. Carol is an educator and legislator and enrolled member of the Mandan. And finally, we have an enrolled member of the Spirit Lake Dakota Nation and a Turtle Mountain Chippewa descendant. Mike Jetty works at the Montana Office of Public Instruction as an Indian education specialist. He has been working with Indian education issues for 30 years, and I've had the pleasure of working with him many, many times. And I found out that Mike loves to collect cheesy jokes. Please welcome our panel tonight.
Hey. Well, hamitaki api, yuha chante waste nape chuzapado. Hello, my relatives. I greet all of you with a handshake from my heart. And Mike Jetty, when I was younger, though, my dad told me, he said, Mike, always greet people as relatives. And I asked him why, and he said, well, that way you can hit them up for cash later on. That's an old Indian trick. But before we start, though, I'm up here with some former educators, so I have to do this, and we got an educator here. So everybody go like this, get warmed up, go like that, and go like this. Wow, you look good out there. Let's try one more time. Okay. All right, you just had your handouts, your overheads, and your PowerPoints. So I got that out of the way. We're good to go. And so thank you for that introduction, Deb, and thank you to the Historical Society for having this panel and for highlighting Indian Education for All and Article 10 of the Constitution. It's really exciting to be a part of this work. And with that, I want to offer up time for Carol and Joyce to kind of explain, a little bit of their history, their work, what got them to where they are now, and some of their significant accomplishments, because if it weren't for these two women, I probably wouldn't have a job right now. And so, so I'm working to implement the bill Carol passed in 1999 to fulfill that constitutional obligation. So it's exciting work, and we were just having a great visit in my office, and we realized we needed to get over here real fast. So we're running on Indian time. We're trying not to perpetuate stereotypes. But with that, I'll turn it over to Carol just for some opening remarks. Anything you want to say, Carol, to get us started off. So, and one thing you should know about Carol Juneau, she is so smart, it only takes her a half an hour to watch 60 Minutes. So, sorry, Carol, I had to do that. So.
That was excellent, Mike. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you here, many old friends and stuff. So it's good. It's good to see all of you. It's been a while since I've been to Helena and see some new things. See the the mall is all torn down, and there's a new historical society being built, and so lots of really nice things taking place. But I'm Carol Juneau. I'm let's see what else. I'm currently living in Billings, Montana. I was in Great Falls, but I'm in Billings for the summer. I've got my son is down there with his children, and so it's be good for me to be near family. So that's where I'm at. And let's see, Indian education for all. I was fortunate, I think, to be able to carry the bill in 1999. It came, Norma Bixby, I think, had a role either with the Board of Public Ed or one of the legislative committees or Macy that had drafted that bill. And I was fortunate to be elected that year to serve in the legislature. And so did have this bill, and it was fun to get through the legislature. It was fun learning the ropes of the legislature and getting it, going through all the committees and things like that, but to get it passed. So it did get through. It didn't get through with a 99 vote, but got through with a pretty good vote on both the House and the Senate. And but it took the effort of many people, the tribes. Many people came to testify, Indian and non-Indian, talking about the importance of it. And thinking about it, 1999, that was, 20 years after the Constitution was passed. So the Constitution is a beautiful provision in the, for Indian education. The state recognizes the distinct and unique heritage of the American Indians and is committed in its educational goals to their cultural integrity. Hopefully I said that right. But 20 years finally, a lot of effort did take place from 1972 to 1999, but I think Joyce is going to talk a little bit about some of the efforts that took place by various agencies. But so it did get passed, explaining the legislative intent of the constitutional language. But and here we are, 2022, 50 years later almost, from the Constitution, celebrating the passage of that historic document. And I do think Montana is one of the only states that has constitutional language.
We are it.
They are it. I mean, so that is significant. So the constitutional delegates are to be commended for their efforts and their work in making sure that the American Indian and Montana Indians were recognized, and that constitutional language has provided a great background to bring us to where we are today and stuff with that. But it was nice to be a part of that process, and I'll share more as we go.
You bet. The opening question I actually sent to both Joyce and Carol was, where were you in 1972 when the Constitution was passed? And, did you realize what was going on at that time and how significant that would be? So maybe you could start with that. I was telling Carol and Joyce I was 4 years old at that time, living on the Crow Creek Reservation in South Dakota, so that's where I was. But you've had a lot of experience here, so.
And one of his co-workers informed us that he was not yet born at that time.
Not me, but my coworker.
Your co-worker, yes. I was a student at the University of Montana. I had 3 children, and I was struggling mightily to get through economics. It was the easiest way to put me to sleep anywhere, and yet it's been the book that I probably have used the most ever since. So interesting. We don't know what we're learning. The Constitution, 50 years, amazing. Having had the opportunity to not be a well-informed student at first, became changed because the Indian Studies law was a law that was going to implement that language, and it was going to require that every teacher on or near a reservation had to take a minimum of 6 credits of Native American studies in order to be certified. And the schools had to make sure that their teachers had this. And there were classes that were developed, and the teachers were people who were interested, who were willing, who knew history, who knew something about education, who knew something about history of the tribes. It wasn't that they were all in agreement about what would be taught. It wasn't that they were all in agreement about how to teach it. And there were differences in perspective. And so when the Office of Public Instruction staff now talks about no blame and shame, that wasn't true of our first round of teaching. And it was very difficult. I sat through a class, I know my mother would have just had a fit. But it was the best we could do. It was the best we knew at the moment. And it resulted in the legislature changing one word in that rule that said that every teacher on or near must take. They changed it to may take, and only 2 schools in the state kept that requirement for the teachers that they had coming in. Browning was one of them. And it was very difficult, so that we languished again. It was a failed legislative attempt, and it languished again until the 1990s. We had people, there was one improvement, I think, that did take place over that time. The Board of Public Education had a Native member each time. When that person retired, a new Native person was appointed in order to fill that slot. So we had Earl Barlow, we had Tommy Thompson. I was the first female Board of Public Education person. It was an incredible education by fire. I had studied to be an educator. I hadn't studied to know all the history or how the rules work together. And it was a challenge to learn all of that. I remember getting the binders for the Board of Public Education. They would be 3 inches thick. and you had to have everything read and ready and be knowledgeable about what was going to be talked about. But Indian education was a part of that. Macy kept Indian education alive and interested throughout that process, and resulted in the law that was carried by Carol and Norma in the legislature. And it was an incredible struggle to get that all the way through. We had a very big boost when the Montana equity lawsuit, Columbia Falls, and gathered a number of other people, and they were suing the state about equity funding for all of the schools in the state. And as it was coming to time for it to be heard at the court, there was a phone call to Carol. She was the president of the Montana Indian Education Association. Take that?
Nice handoff.
Yeah. If you look at it, I said I guess at that point we were getting a little tired of having all of this wonderful language and wonderful policy and a constitutional backing, but no action. And and we had been, MIA, the Montana Indian Education Association, was a nonprofit group that worked and was representative of various reservations and areas in Montana, had a board of directors. We talked about should we join this lawsuit and how do we do that? And Steve Doherty came and helped us. We met, I know, in the Holiday Inn, I think in Billings or Great Falls, one of the two, and had a meeting after the conference was over and talked about whether we should try to do some work with the lawsuit, and decided to do so. We, the Montana Indian Education Association, along with tribes, with support from many, many groups, filed an amicus brief, and so that went to court right with the lawsuit. And I think it was 2004 probably when the decision came down, and the Indian Education for All conclusion was probably the strongest part of the lawsuit. I think the state, the Supreme Court said that the state had failed, and to provide what the Constitution had asked people to do and had asked the educational agencies to do. And so 2004, 2005, 1999, the bill, 1972, the language. So we were still plugging away. I don't know, I don't know why we kept plugging away, but there were educators that believed in that. There were people that believed in that. And you had to have this real strong belief that things should be better, that our kids should learn about who they are, and also that everybody should learn about who we are, not just because it's not designed for just Indian students, and so many people think Indian Education for All is designed for Indian students alone, and it is not. It's designed for every student, K through 12, in the state of Montana, and also for the university system. So, and lo and behold, 2005 special session, guess what we got? Money matters. Money matters in everything you're working on, whether it be some local event you're planning, whatever. But to implement it, Governor Schweitzer was able to work with the legislature, and we were there, and he provided, a nice sum of money to Office of Public Instruction, to our schools, to our tribal colleges for work on the history, and so it's taken off from there, and I think OPI Mike has worked there most of those years since that, has done a tremendous job in developing curriculum, developing resources for our teachers in our schools, K-12, and I think they're doing some work now at the university level as well. But one of the things you have to think of, I said, and I was talking to Mike and Joyce earlier, this effort was not easy. I said, you took a look at the Constitution Convention itself, then the work on the Indian Culture Master Plan, the work by education agencies, the work developing curriculum, the work doing, so there was all these little bits and pieces that had to take place. People had to go to the accreditation committees and make sure there was language in the accreditation standards. People had to go to the Board of Regents and make sure they were passing the appropriate policies. People had to go to the Board of Public Education. So I said it took an enormous effort of a lot of people to make all of these things happen and to get it ready. And so I think by 2005, we were ready for funding, and it happened, ready to start. And the, essential understandings, I think that was one of the first steps. And Joyce, I think you were involved with some of that, so that might be something you wanna.
Sure, well, one thing Joyce mentioned was MACI, the Montana Advisory Council for Indian Education, is a group that the tribes recommend to the Board of Public Ed and OPI to represent them on a government-to-government basis. And so they are one of our main partners working with Indian Education, with the Board of Public Ed and with OPI. And so that's one of our major partners in working with tribal government relations. But so they were a big group part of this effort, making sure we got everybody on board at the table. But one thing that happened right after Carol brought her bill, her daughter Denise, who we all know, was working at Indian Education at OPI as the Indian Ed Specialist. She was an office of one. And I was also working there with the Title I programs, but Denise convened some folks together to say, what do we want kids to learn about Montana Indians? And it was really exciting to be a part of that conversation, and Joyce was part of those conversations. But what came out of that was a document called The Essential Understandings Regarding American Indians. And you want to just tell them a little bit about that, Joyce? And
This is one of those cases where beware of what you ask for, you may get it. There are 20,000 teachers across the state of Montana, and the idea of how do we impart to all of these teachers what it is that, number one, we had to get all 8 tribes to agree theoretically on what it was we should be putting in there. And then once we got the tribes to agree, then we had to be sure that we were providing it out to the teachers in a way that would be useful to them, educational and useful. And for most of the teachers, they hadn't taken any Native American studies. And so it was crash courses all the way through. And the essential understandings, amazing. Mike shared today what the latest version looks like. And it looks remarkably close to what the original did. And so it has survived a test of time. And it isn't a terribly in-depth analysis of American Indian history in any one tribe, but it is a general provision about all of the tribes in the state. And so it's been a great foundation. The Office of Public Instruction has worked tirelessly, endlessly, trying to incorporate the information that has been coming to them and developing information to go out. It's been an incredible process. When other people look to the state of Montana as a guide for how to do this, every state in the Union is on Indian land. Everybody in the United States should understand what that means. But it's unfortunately not the case. And a lot of people will come up, the idea of feeling shame is as much from not knowing what they could have known if there was more provided to them. And so it's hard when somebody apologizes. I mean, I can't tell you how many times somebody will come up and say, I am so sorry, I didn't know. And it really isn't, it isn't them, it isn't me. It was what happened in history, it was points in time, and it's something that we do better if we understand it so that we can move forward.
yeah, and I think, you hit on that, it's about moving beyond blame, shame, and guilt. And that wasn't the case in the 70s though, right, Joyce?
No,
What you
it
were saying,
wasn't.
because it was a lot of that.
And it was hard. It was very, very hard. I know if I had my mother sitting next to me in the class that I sat down in, I was a helper bee. University students, you get to be assigned to somebody and carry the papers, hand them out, pick them up. Mm-hmm. At any rate, that was my job, and I was in this class, and they began by accusing the group of having created this problem, this hurt that they had, and my mother would never have sat through that. Yeah. But we didn't know how do we make this important? How do we make this worthwhile for educators? It was a real challenge, and we had lots of different opinions, lots of different direction.
Yeah. And I think those essential understandings really help frame things that you can talk about tribes in generalities, but then you can really get deep down to specific tribal specific topics. And you can break those essential understandings down into 4 categories of diversity, culture, history, and sovereignty. And so those 4 themes are weaved throughout our essential understandings. You know, tribes are very diverse. Individual Indians are very diverse. And, you know, cultures, there are songs, there are ceremonies that are tens of thousands of years old. And we can talk about those in our essential understandings and those beliefs and how they still, you know, impact tribal nations. And then history, you know, the history from American Indian perspectives. And I was just telling Joyce and Carol earlier, I said, you made history. It's like these are living legends, you know, for what they've done in the state of Montana. Their work has helped to shape the political and social, you know, shape of our state of Montana. And it's really neat to see that in action, about what young students are learning about American Indians now. And so it's just exciting to see that. And then sovereignty is the last essential understanding. You know, that's really what makes Indian people unique from any other cultural group, is that we have a unique legal and political relationship with the U.S. government. And it's powerful. And so I think, you know, the work that Carol and Joyce have done is really, you know, taking that to heart and making it a, you know, reality, and making sure I have a job. So thank you. But Carol, just to add to that.
You know, one of the things I was thinking of when was in 1972, talking about there was no Indian delegates, Native American delegates at all. So we thank Dorothy Eck. We thank, is it Harbaugh, Chet Blaylock. There was 4 of them, I think, that really did a lot of work to ensure that some language was put into the Constitution. We thank Mavis, is it Mavis?
Mavis Scott.
Mavis Scott and Diana Lupi, 2 students from Fort Peck, who came to the Constitution Convention and asked that their history and culture be taught in the schools, that they would like to see themselves. That's the same way as if you go into a classroom. Wouldn't you like to see yourself in the teachers, in the books you open, in the materials you study? I think that's what they were talking about, is that, you know, we're invisible, but we're here. We were always here. And I think the constitutional delegates that worked on it understood that. And I said, so we thank them, and we thank, you know, the people that worked so hard on the Article 10, Section 1 of the Constitution that got that language in, and for the people that came and testified to that Constitution. But also, Mike, talking about being there, I think it took political power to make sure some of these things happened. And I was fortunate to be in the legislature and fortunate to carry the bill, a new legislator, a new Indian legislator. So I think that had that power of being able to be the one to carry the bill, to be able to present it on the floor, to be able to present it to committees, was meaningful. And I think that has grown. Have you, I mean, over the last, I don't know how many years, how many Native Americans are now serving in the legislature? Mm-hmm. And there has been numerous kinds of policies developed that affect the American Indians in Montana and our communities. But, so all of that stuff, as you're saying, like all these little pieces had to be together. We had to have political power a little bit, and we had a little bit in 1999. So I said that was good. One of the things, there's a couple of people that really helped me at the legislature, in addition to the people that came from the tribes. And one of them is here today, Connie Erickson is here. She worked for Legislative Services. Connie and Eddie McClure were kind of like, I would go to them and say, what do I do now, you know, and where am I supposed to go with this? You know, people had to teach you, and they really taught me and encouraged me and helped me with that. And so I appreciate that. So Connie had a big role, and Eddie had a big role in making sure that bill got through, so along with many other people.
Yeah, and if you want more information on Indian Studies Law, Connie wrote a really cool article called The Indian Studies Law and Exercise and Fertility. And we link to it on our OPI website, so that document is still there for folks who are interested in some of the history, but you did a good job of laying that out about why the intent, but why it didn't work. So but it's been an ongoing journey with a lot of people helping us on the way.
And also one person I might note is a person that helped with the political power of Native Americans in Montana was Joe Lamson, and Joe is here today, so appreciate his efforts and his
Hey,
work.
Joe!
He served on the redistricting commission, I think he said, yeah, when we were able to establish legislative districts on each of the reservations, and also 3 Senate majority districts, which represented those specific reservations. So I said that, in addition to all the other stuff, was an important part of this whole process. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and I think it was you, Joe, that gave me the best advice on testifying before the legislative committees. He said, remember the 3 B's, be prepared, be brief, and be seated. And so that was really good advice. Just get in there, get your message, and sit down. But, I know we had some questions, but, one of the cool things, I guess, that other states have developed essential understandings based on Montana's model. And so that's why I say Joyce and Carol have, helped to make history here, not just in Montana, but nationwide, being leaders in Indian education. But, what are some things, I guess, you've seen, where we've been to where we are, and, maybe visions for the future about how we can keep this going forward? So,
When I went to DC, I thought I had a background well-founded in Indian education. The diversity that we talk about in the state of Montana is multiplied 20-fold when you get to DC, and you're looking at 570 some tribes, and those are just the ones that are federally recognized. And all of the others, the languages, the issues, the concerns, I thought I understood the idea of allotment. I thought I understood the idea of boarding schools and the process of relinquishing your right as an Indian. California had 19 tribes who were declared no longer tribes. I didn't know that until I was sitting in a consultation process in California. All of these things are things that could be part of education for all of us to understand why we have some of the difficulties that we do and how to move forward from these difficulties in order to work better together. In the process of listening to close-up students, we had students who would come from every state in the country and in a large room in DC, and we would be listening to what they were interested in, and they have been given a topic, and the topic varied each year. But invariably, the students who really had answers that were well-founded, that had historical information that went with them, and that were proactive kinds of responses, direction, were the kids from Montana. They would answer, where are you from? And invariably, the ones who were becoming the most speaker-oriented of the groups, year after year, were Montana kids. And I credit that to the Indian Ed for All and the fact that not only do our native students learn more about their history, but all of our students learn more about the history. And it's incredibly valuable. And that was a real surprise to me. It was something I have been waiting quite a while now to be able to tell somebody just exactly that. It's really heartening to see that these kids are picking it up, understanding, and applying it to subjects that are different from what they were presented in school. So I think that value is incredible.
Anything to add on to that, Carol, where we're at What do you think for the future?
I think you showed us some of your new social studies lesson plans and accreditation standards that have been developed. And they're very specific, they're very significant. And those, like, you know, and when lessons plans are developed, I think kids throughout Montana, K-12, are going to be, you know, much more knowledgeable about their Indian neighbors and their Indian friends and their who they are, and also what role they play in that. I do think we have to be vigilant and keep checking on things and seeing how things are going. And I would think the MACI, the Montana Advisory Council on Indian Ed, should play a strong role in that they be the kind of watchdog and make sure our schools are implementing Indian education for all, that the funds that they're being given each year are going to, whether it be teacher training or curriculum or materials and resources. I think we need to ensure that happens. And it would be nice to get a little additional funding, of course, but you know, that's always pretty difficult. In fact, when I passed the bill in 1999, one of the reasons it got passed was what? Guess what? No money was attached to it. I had put $10 next to it. It would not have gone through. Yeah, it would not have gone through. So we had to get a bill passed with the legislative intent, but no money for implementation. And that was just political, you know, just, you know, that it wouldn't get through if there was money there. And so it did take a great big effort to get money developed over the next, 10 years or so.
However, the equity lawsuit made a
And
big difference.
We had to
When the court tells you something like that, it makes a difference.
sometimes you have to go to court for things. And so that was a good decision on the Native people in the state of Montana to go to court with and get that. One of the things I do think, and I believe there's steps being taken at the university level for implementing Indian education for all. I believe the constitutional provision applies to them just as much as it applies to K-12. And I do believe that they are doing, you know, great things with the facilities they're building and resources they're developing, but, you know, are all of the students graduating from our university system with some basic understanding of who the American Indian people are in the state of Montana and who their neighbors are? I don't think so. And so that, I guess one thing that I believe there's a committee been organized now to work on that. So I do think that the university system has some steps to take, and
They're catching up to K-12.
Let's hope.
Yeah, and I would think that teacher education program at the university system would create and graduate teachers who are ready to teach Indian education for all, or make sure that if you're graduating in the art department, or if you're graduating as a math teacher, if you're graduating as a history teacher, that you have some content within you ready to prepare lessons and go out and teach in our school systems. But so I think that's something that needs to be, I said something, you know, watched, you know, monitored, and I hope the committee that's working on it does that. So, but continue with the effort. I think there's still a long ways to go in terms of making sure all students in K-12 have a good knowledge and understanding of who their neighbors are, and the neighbors who were here first.
Yeah, one of the things I was sharing with Joyce and Carol right before coming over here was our social study standards. And a grade 3 social study standard now says all students have to learn the names of the tribes in their own languages. And so what do the Pend d'Oreille call themselves? You know, Kalispe. what do the Crow people call themselves? We want every third grader from Baker to Broadus to Kalispell to Bozeman, Helena, Butte, to know that. And so that's some of the fun resources that I get to develop in conjunction with folks like Deb and Martha Cole here at MHS to, to make that happen. And so, and then to provide professional development and to work with the tribes to make sure we're putting out the right information. And so, it's a journey.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing journey, and it's a collaborative journey. It's not just Native folks doing this. 90% of the teachers in Montana are non-Native, and that's who has to implement Indian Ed for All. Julie Kajun, Salus educator, likes to joke around about on Indian Heritage Day, we don't have enough Indians to go around. Folks, everybody wants people coming into classrooms, but year-round, spread it out. So, but I know we want to have some time for some audience questions, and so we'll just open the floor up. And we're former educators. We're all really good at wait time and eye contact until someone asks a question. But so, okay, we got a question in the back here.
Is the Indian education for all implemented only in the public schools across Montana, or is it in any of the other private schools?
Okay, Indian education for all implemented just in public and not private. Is that right? I could speak to that, but go ahead, Joyce. You're former Board of Public Ed, so.
At the time that we were looking at the implementation initially, we were not anticipating the ability to enforce anything with private schools or other educators. However, the very fact that this information was coming out, the lesson plans that were being developed, there were requests from some of those schools, some of those teachers for materials. And so I think it is not an enforceable authority, even though this is the language of the Constitution for the state of Montana, and that's all citizens. The enforcement is probably only through our public system.
Yep, but lots of private schools have reached out, and anytime someone reaches out to our office, we provide them, materials or let them know where professional development is. So, Indian Ed for All is for all. And so, great question. So, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, I want to thank Joyce and Carol for this incredible journey we've all been on for so long. And to build on what Joyce was saying, how it is nice to see it's all done because we believed it was good for everybody. Make us move forward as a state and meet things that are happening, as Joyce said. I think Carol, was so pivotal to that, and she's pretty modest about it. But people don't have appreciation for how that constitutional language pivoted the whole other important parts of our Constitution that ensure quality education for all of our students, which, these fights that we were going on all those years, a big part of it, Carol's right, it's about money, and we would come forward and they'd just say, well, we don't have money for regular stuff, we're not gonna fund this, forget it. And so that was all that was tied up, and that's what precipitated the suit. That suit was still pretty deadlocked because the legislature made the rules that, established underfunding of schools.
Yes.
So how that happened and what broke it finally open, and I mean, as a person that was involved there, it was just visually, it was like a white light, was when both the state and the plaintiffs, the schools and the Indian Education Association agreed that, yeah, this was a no-brainer. We're going to put this count aside. Everybody agrees that, that's there. Well, that opened the floodgates for all these arguments that were just sort of 50-50 based on the law, all of a sudden had this momentum that was catapulted by that decision and by those young students that took the time to come and talk to the convention. And so, and the other thing is that Carol doesn't talk about at that time was there was a group of our citizens and rural person, and Carol was one of them that took the state to court on fulfillment of the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act was very tied up with the Montana Constitution and how we draw districts in there. And that would, again, not have happened if there didn't sort of have that little extra elbow grease and persistence under incredible odds. And just again, it was just like, I like to tell people that, the funding for schools, I mean, I worked session after session, and we thought it was a good session if we, were not losing $25 million, and the notion that we were going to actually, have a session that actually accomplished something, was just unheard of, and it was because of this bill, and people, things do happen, and the Constitution was put together so beautifully that it reinforces all those things for everybody. So thanks again.
Right on. Thank you, Joe. Other questions from the audience? Yeah, in the back.
What input do you have as educators choices of textbooks?
Okay, the question is input regarding textbooks. So, Carol or Joyce?
I think that's a school board. Individual school districts, I believe, implement their curriculum, that accreditation standards that are developed by the state, and it's I believe, the local school board that determines the curriculum for their students and the resources for them, if that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's a local control issue.
Local control, yeah.
But I want every school to have a copy of Montana Stories of the Land and the new MHS textbook that just came out for 4th grade. I think she's got a copy right here. So there are 2 excellent textbooks, and this is just hot off the press. Great book. And I think about, maybe 65% of this is, American Indian history and culture and content. So there are some excellent resources that are being developed now to help support our constitutional language and our state standards and Indian Ed for All. So I'm taking this one.
That's mine.
I'm not certain where further in that, if somebody had a book in mind like this, say this book here that they knew about, I'm not certain whether the teachers recommend, books to the board or to their principal, and it goes. I'm not certain of that process in the local schools. But I would think parent groups would be a good group too, as far as like looking at this resource and saying, hey, here's a great book for your school, and I hope that you would get this for your students.
Under the Office of Indian Education from DC, there is money that is distributed to all schools that serve American Indian students. And that Title VI money is governed, is monitored by Indian parent committees. And those Indian parent committees are very strong voices in those communities.
Yeah. And so textbooks, they're powerful tools. But I've got a whole stack of books in my office that are, considered biased, that have inaccurate information about American Indians. So we have evaluation guides on our website. Who wrote the book? How old is it? Did they consult with tribal people? And so we've got those kinds of resources for evaluation. So question in the back.
How would I access
Not only across the district, but so I assure you there isn't.
Are you aware of anywhere that we can search?
So the question is, is there a way to determine what books are in current school libraries? Is that, and you'd have to go to the individual school, is what I would say. Each school has their own records. we don't have, like you said, we don't have that at OPI. But we do, recommend, here's steps to evaluate your books. But we'd have, over the years, OPI has used the funding that we have got to provide accurate and authentic books to school libraries. And we do have a listing on our OPI website of all the materials we've sent out to every school. And so every school library should have a set of tribal histories, of other books that have been, written by American Indians. And so there are some core foundational books that should be in every K-12 public school library anyway in our state. So there is that list. What's that?
In my opinion, for sure.
Yeah, you bet. So good question. Thank you.
Yeah, I would think that would be an excellent activity for the Title, is it Title 6 or Title 7? Title 6 parent committees or a project for them to say, let's go look at our library tonight as a part of our meeting. And let's make a list of all the books in here about American Indians. And then let's check them out and take a look at them and see if they're accurate. But I said that would be a really cool, it would also be a good college student study.
There you go. Good dissertation.
I mean,
maybe.
yeah, a dissertation, what's in our libraries, or something, I don't know what you could call it. But I said, those are some things that you just need people to do. You actually need people just to go to the libraries and look and write them down and check them out. That's the kind of work that takes.
It's cool.
Yes,
And go as a
absolutely.
group.
And stuff.
Find
Have a friend.
other people who are interested and go as a group.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a lot
Lot of
better
things
when you're
take.
not the only one.
Yeah, at OPI, we recognize that school librarians are some of our most valuable partners, because oftentimes we'd let the administrators know we're sending out resources, but if we wanted to get it to the teachers, we'd let the librarians know. And they would get stuff out, because they're the central hub for all the information, and especially the curriculum and books. So this guy goes into a library one time, and he says, I'd like a large pepperoni and a Coke. And the reference librarian goes, hey, this is a library. And the guy goes, oh, I'd like a large pepperoni. I just had to throw out a library joke since you said that. But I know we're almost at our closing, but maybe one more question right here.
Yeah, Mike, this is mostly directed to you. I'm just curious that in the present moment, given the kind of political leadership that we are experiencing in Montana and its ideology to sort of suppress any kind of educational systems that others, blacks, Indians, and so on. Is that prevailing ideology almost to the point of the Attorney General legal if anybody is ashamed in public education? Does that trickle down to OPI, particularly as your leader?
Well, I just want to, we were talking about this in my office earlier about how Indian Ed for All, we've institutionalized it. I mean, it's in our accreditation standards, it's in our definition of a quality education, it's embedded throughout all of our content standards, and so it'd be very hard for someone to dismantle it. And so we're still moving forward. We haven't been told to stop. We've got a lot of great resources and professional development that's still going on in spite of all the weird politics going on out there. We're still moving forward with our message about diversity, culture, history, sovereignty, multiple perspectives. But I think we always come back to that. It's not about blame, shame, or guilt, because I think that's where a lot of that backlash comes from. But it's just taking a more accurate, honest, inclusive look at our country's history, where we've been, where we're going. And I think Indian Ed for All is a really good example of a bipartisan effort. And maybe we can use Indian Ed for All to kind of bring us back together, thinking about relationships and connections and relationships with the land. But we got 5 more minutes left.
I just want to make a comment just to let people know how far-reaching this really is. We have incorporated this into the 200-plus museums across the state of Montana also in interpreting the Native American life and the Native American culture. Mike has helped me a lot with this. And they're the first people, they're the first place all the tourists and out-of-state people come. And so we want to tell the story correctly. And so that has taken off across the nation to what they call decolonizing museums. And that's a very important issue that's going on right now. So this is a really big thing, is learning how to tell the story, and it's building a lot of bridges in Montana between the tribes and the museums, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, and I do have to say, thanks, Deb. Our current state soup, she is a big supporter of Indian Ed for All. And so, so that's, says something right there for someone from that side of the aisle to support that, I think is really powerful. That hopefully it continues to be a good bipartisan effort. So.
And one of the discussions that took place throughout this whole process has been, how do we have adults who understand that this is the land of tribes, the home of tribes, and that there are interactions that have taken place over time that have changed our history. And so it's not just students who benefit from this. And as our students are growing up, we are seeing them graduate from colleges, we're seeing them going into roles, and they take this with them. They take an understanding. When Carol was first a legislator, and there was only one legislator that was Indian before, it was very difficult to have a conversation about these issues because people didn't understand the history, the background. And so this begins to inform everybody in our population on through our legislators. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. Carol, we're almost out of time, so Joyce, Carol, thank you so much for your comments. But do you want any final words of wisdom to give the audience and the viewers out there?
No, just thank you very much for coming tonight to listen to us. And we want to remember all the Constitution delegates who worked so hard. We want to remember everybody throughout the state, the tribes, the many individuals. I think Mike's got a list of a lot of the people that testified
I do.
in the legislature.
A big old document here that Carol put together. It's got names of all kinds of folks that helped make this happen.
Yeah, I said there was many, many people, and I do appreciate all of them and all their work. And I hope we have a young parent in the back. So I said, that's what we need. We need parents that are saying, hey, what books are in our library? What are our kids learning? And they need to, so keep on with your work. That's what we need to, I think, need parents like that. Thank you very much.
And, thanks all of you for attending. So. I'll leave you with this closing comment, though, and it kind of gets at the blame, shame, or guilt. When I was growing up, my dad told me, he said, Mike, never criticize someone until you've walked a mile in his moccasins. You've heard that, right? And I asked my dad why, and he said, well, that way you can be a mile away, plus you got his moccasins. So, horrible joke. Sherry Bergeron saw that was coming. She just started shaking her head. So Deb, closing comment there?
Well, thank you guys very much. This was very enlightening, and I enjoyed it immensely, and I'm sure everybody else did. I just want to let you guys know that there are copies of the 72 Constitution right outside the door here, if you'd like to take one with you. And come back next week. We've got Diane Sands. She's going to be talking about the women in the 72 Con. So love to see you again.
All right, thank you. Yay.
Thank you, ladies.
Oh.